Hello there, girls and boys. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're gonna be listening for the first time to a band that, even though I like their music considerably, I don't happen to consider myself a fan. We're talking about, of course, of Gojira, the French band that happened to, for whatever reason, end up being part of the opening ceremony of a particularly controversial Olympic Games. And well, we're gonna be analyzing a song from the album Magma. The song in question is Silvera. And well, I gotta tell you, the song is badass. And it's gonna be a quite interesting ride. So stay tuned because this is gonna be quite good. But before we go, if this is our first time channel, I welcome you because in here we analyze the music that I happen to like, but not necessarily love, from the perspective of an active musician and professional music producer, in a way to expand our knowledge when it comes to music production and songwriting using language that anybody can understand. If this is our jam, let's rock and roll. So here we go, girls and boys, Silvera by Gojira. Okay, gotta say that it's heavy as all balls. And the first thing that I gotta point out is the amazing guitar tone. It's fantastic because it's insanely distorted. It has plenty of gain. It's super heavy sounding, but still, it's quite well defined. Although a little bit dark in sound. What do I mean by dark? When it comes to defining sounds, we tend to use words that are not necessarily speaking musical in nature. For example, when I say dark, it's due to the fact that we're removing some of the high end of the sound that we're hearing. For example, right now I applied a little bit of EQing, which removed some of the high end of my voice, thus turning the sound of my voice into a little bit something darker. Okay? Now it's back to the usual sound, and the guitars and the mix in general, it's kind of dark sounding. It's not bad by any means. It's a style. And it reminds me a lot of the mixes and the sound of this other fantastic band called Mastodon. And they, in my opinion, they have this quite similar tone, completely different bands, of course, but the way that they write their music and even the productions are quite maybe influenced by one another. I don't know. But I gotta say that the sound is fantastic. A little bit too dark for my own liking. The way that I would produce my music would be a little bit brighter, a little bit more on the higher, with a little bit more of a sparkliness. But maybe because the way that I see music is completely different from the way that they do. Again, it's far from being a bad sound. It's a great sounding record. I also gotta point out at the fantastic sound of the drums. Please remind me of the name of the drummer because he's killing it in this track. I love the way that he's using the cymbals. Particularly during that melodic section, which is so cool. And when they brought it back during the singing section of the track, was so well done. And there was also a beautiful modulation, which is a transition into another chord progression, that was, again, unexpected, and once again, a sign of great musicians and great composers. As I stated in the beginning of this video, even though I don't happen to be a fan of the band, I like them a lot. and take it for what it is. Okay, I simply I enjoy their music, but I simply don't find myself listening to it that often. I am far from being a foreigner to their music, but still, you get me. It's a matter of taste, I guess. Now, what do you think about the sound of the vocals? It's it's quite interesting because they are positioned, and by that I mean, look at the sound and the volume of the rest of the instrumentation in context of the mix and when it comes to the sound of vocals as well. And try to see, once I play back the track again, where or how loud the vocals are when compared to the rest of the track. In my opinion, no. I will wait for you to hear and tell me what you think. Now, moving over to the sound of the drums, they're awesome, particularly the kick drum. Usually, when it comes to metal, I don't know if it's because when I was developing my skills as a mixer, the whole point of having a super clicky and pointy sounding kick drum was one of the aims of any music producer, particularly when it came to rock and roll in that particular period of music production history. And in this case, we got something that is kind of similar. Again, it's far from it, but it reminds me a little bit of the sound of a stoner rock. But that's up for debate, and I am exposing that to you so we can have this conversation. So please bear in mind that idea, and while I play the track back, compare everything I just said, because I would love to hear and to read what do you think about my comments, especially after we continue listening to the music. Once we come back, I'm gonna hit the sound of the mix and use the analyzer, and also I will address my opinion when it comes to the sound of vocals. Let's continue. Okay, this track is quite short, girls and boys. It's 3 minutes 30. So I decided to let the song develop as it were because, well, it would have been kind of difficult for me to stop it and make commentary on it without the song feeling like, well, I killed the bass. Now, what do you think about the vocals? I think they are sitting, when it comes to the balance of the mix, in a very correct position. But I mentioned this because they are not necessarily at the forefront, if you know what I mean. Because when he's going for a more guttural sound, when he's not actually singing in a melodic fashion, we get the sound of the vocals as part of the massive guitar and bass and drums ensemble. Because the band feels huge when it comes to the heaviness of it. They are totally rocking the ball out of the park. And the vocals feel like they're part of the wall of sound rather than being the leading instrument or element in the context of the mix. But when it comes to the melodic sections, you could see that the vocals went a little bit closer to the front That means a little bit louder than before, giving a sense of order, if that makes sense to you. And it's fun because this song is kind of chaotic in nature. It has this kind of, I don't know, dystopian sound, for a lack of a better term, to it. And whenever those sections kick in, the more melodic sections, and the vocals putting it themselves as part of the at the forefront of the song, it gives a very nice resolution, don't you think? Excellently done. Now let's talk about the mix because it's quite cool. Over here, girls and boys, you got in front of you the tool that has been in front of you the entirety of the time, and this is known as decibel. Decibel is comprised of two different elements, and each of them are telling us a different story based on the same principle. This guy over here, it's what we use to describe or to have access to a visual medium, through a visual medium of the frequency response of the entire track. That stands for 20 hertz, which is the lowest point we can hear as frequency-wise, when it comes to frequencies, of course, and 20,000 hertz, which is the highest we can hear as human beings. And this white line represents the loudness of each of the given frequencies within the human hearing spectrum throughout the entirety of the track, the highest point as the track we're playing. And as you can see, not surprised at all, I told you that the song and the album itself feels dark, and there you have the total visual representation of that. We got a very pronounced roll-off of the high end, almost reaching a good chunk of the mid-highs. That's far from being a bad thing. Usually, whenever you watch any of our analysis in this channel, depending on the kind of music, we're going to end up seeing a little bit more of energy over here. But this record in particular, it's tracked and even mixed looking for this particular result. That give us this is opening up the space for the kick drum and the bass to feel even bigger than they are, and even the tone of the guitars. Please tell me what kind of tuning they're using because it's quite low. The key of the songs is quite low, and the fact that they remove some of the low end allows for the songs to feel bigger and meaner. And this is the interesting part. And once again, the mastery behind the production of this album. Even though we're dealing with a dark sound, we got a lot of definition on the instruments that we're hearing. Let me explain. When it comes to sound, imagine, and you should have some form of diagram in front of you at this very point, on which is displayed the three different bands, low, mids, and highs, okay? In super simple terms, when it comes to defining what kind of results or what kind of sound we could expect, or emotional response, if I put it in a better term, we should expect from each of those bands is the following. When it comes to lows, in that area is where we're going to find the punchiness, the heaviness, the beefiness, but also what it's gluing the entire track together. In the mid-range is where we find the information, the core of the message. And on the highs is where we get details. When you roll off the highs, you can run the risk of removing some of the details of each of the instruments. In here, for example, let's say we're dealing with drums. You could be killing off a good chunk of the brightness of the cymbals, for example, but also you could be removing some of the attack of the kick drum and the snare. And in this case, the mix is perfect. They did a great job. And kudos to the production team as well, because this is coming not just out of the mixing board. This was designed as such from the very beginning. And now with that in mind, taking a look back at the screen, you can see that we got an insanely pronounced low end, way louder than anything else in the mix. Makes total sense because the sound of the band is massive, like dark sounding, evil, ominous to a certain degree, and angry. And as I explained before, the lows tends to have this emotional connotation, and the way that they interpret these kind of sounds is like dark and evil. And I don't know if you could hear that drone sound that was playing at certain sections of the track, and I even attempted to put some of my bubbles pointing at those sounds while they were playing. They were quite low in the mix when it comes to volume, but they are quite integral to the sound because it's adding an extra layer of interest and also pushing the message further. Now, the second section of our analyzer is known as our dynamic range analyzer. And this guy, girls and boys, let me just make sure that I have the right information on the screen. This guy, girls and boys, is what it's gonna allow us to see the way that our song throughout time became, how loud it went, or how far the difference is between the quietest point in volume of the track when compared to the highest point in volume of the track throughout time. And this, it's not gonna be a surprise to anybody, but this song is basically loud and then louder. Because the song is quite balls to the wall. It's very honest to God when it comes to that. It's just loud, mean, and heavy and punchy. So we're not gonna see that much of variation when it comes to the dynamic range, but still we got some. This is very important, girls and boys. For those of you who know, well, you know, and that means that you've been watching this show for long enough. But for those of you who are new, dynamic range stands not only for the difference in volume between the quiet and the loudest, but also the way that we understand the sound and music in particular. Depending on how loud it is, our human brains will feel the music to be more exciting. When it's quieter, it becomes more introspective and a little bit more mysterious sounding, okay? That's why it's so important. And playing with those moments in volume makes or breaks a record. And in here, you can see that this section, it's slightly higher in volume. Why? That's the chorus. Clearly the chorus. You can see that this is the introduction of the track, and when we hit the loudest part is the chorus, and this is the first time we play the track. It's the first minute and a half, I think. And then we move over, keep this in mind. We move over to the next second section, and basically the rest of the song, and you can see that what used to be the loudest point in volume of our track became the standard. And this is due to the fact that when you're mixing, you can find yourself in this kind of quasi-arms race, on which once you pushed the faders upwards and you started to push the sound a little bit louder than before, it's going to be quite difficult for you to bring it back based on the material that you're working on. And this kind of music, being as loud and intense as it is kind of difficult to come back to a quieter section. As you can see, we're progressively speaking just going louder and louder and louder and louder and louder until we finish the track. How fun is that? Even though this was kind of short, girls and boys, this is a great example of how short music, if done correctly, can tell an entire story. See how many things we could discuss in this, just by listening to this 3 minutes and something track. Once again, proving that the band, it's a very good band. Not my favorite, but huge respect for the guys. They are doing a great job. And I hope that their success continues, because they deserve it. And look, not a fan, but I like their music. Take it for what it is. So there you have it, girls and boys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining. And please give me any other Gojira song that you would like to be analyzed by me alongside you next time around, because this is far from the last time that we're going to be giving a shout out to these guys. So please let me know which one would be the next for this show to be analyzed on. Now, girls and boys, if you like to support this channel and this kind of content, the best way to do it is by listening to music on Apple Music or Spotify. That, by the way, might have some Gojira elements, but it's far from being Gojira-like. And but it has plenty of prog rock, so I think you might like it if you like Gojira. So give it a try. And if you happen to, of course, want to support this channel a little bit more, well, you can join us on Instagram and X, because that's the best way for you to get in touch with us in a much more personal basis. And of course, girls and boys, the only thing left to be said is that I had to remind you that you should never let anybody tell you what to dream about. And remember, I will see you when I see you.